Good afternoon, and welcome to today's third session for this dynamic seminar. Today, I would like to introduce Dr. Joseph Jones and Dr. Talithia Washington for today's segment on leveraging our collective capacity for greater impact and reach. Dr. Joseph Jones serves as the Executive Director of the W.E.B. Du Bois Southern Center for Studies in Public Policy and Associate Professor of Political Science at Clark Atlanta University. Welcome, Dr. Jones.
Thank you.
Dr. Washington serves as the Executive Director of the Center for Applied Data Science and Analytics. She also serves as the Sean McLeese Endowed Chair. Welcome, Dr. Washington.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So let's get straight to the conversation. So I have a few questions I'd like to ask, and then we're going to open up the room for questions from our viewers. So the first question, what models of collaboration among HBCUs? Either one could take the floor.
Well, I'll take a stab at it. I guess the most obvious and most long-standing collaborations, I think, are done through intermediaries, right? So we think about UNCF and the Thurgood Marshall Fund as being this space that convenes a lot of HBCUs together around fundraising, right? And to some extent, capacity building and to some extent, research. And then you think about it down here in Atlanta, the Atlanta University Center Consortium. We have several colleges and universities together, Spelman College, Morehouse College, Clark Atlanta University, ITC, Morehouse School of Medicine. And so the AUCC serves as a sort of like a convening space to try to bring all of these institutions together around how they can work collaboratively within this space. So that serves like, cross registration in classes. And so students at Morehouse can take classes at Spelman, and people at Spelman can take classes at Clark Atlanta. Even around shared security apparatus. So the chiefs come together and they think about how they can serve the whole entire AUC collectively. And then also you think about all the chief academic officers come together. So it's because of the space and so many institutions that are there together, it serves as a convening space around that. So those are I think the two things that basically come to mind. They're not really institution to institution. It's usually a medium that kind of serves as a space to bring people together. And so I don't know if Dr. Washington wants to add on anything else.
Wonderful. That's great. And so models of collaboration, and let's just be frank, collaboration is hard work. There's a lot of, in any relationship, whether it's a personal relationship or institutional relationship, things have to be negotiated in that collaboration. Each entity has their own value system, their own culture, their own expectations as what is deemed as the norm or modus operandi for engagement. And so that has to be, I'll say, acknowledged and respected. And then also each of the entity or entities need to understand and know what they benefit from the collaboration. Why should we collaborate if I can, or you, or they can do it better as on their own? And so there has to be some sort of specific gain through the collaboration, through the consortia. So a couple of the consortia that I like, I'll say, obviously the organizations like the United Negro College Fund that help support HBCUs in a philanthropic way to really fuel funding support for students and institutions. Also in the same spirit, the Thurgood Marshall College Fund that, Thurgood Marshall College Fund supports the publics and UNCF the privates. And I know I'm being blanketed because not all institutions are, we'll say, a member. But they really play a nice, I think, crucial role across HBCUs in helping us support the work that we do, and then also amplify our collective voice. Another partnership that I'm involved with is the HBCU CHIPS Network. I'll put a link in the chat, but I can't put it to everybody, so somebody could toss it over. So chips, not potato chips, but microchips, like in your phone or your watch or your car or your dot, dot, dot. There's this thing called a microchip that makes it go. So there was a Chips and Science Act to bring the production of microchips back to the United States because the majority, like 80 some odd percent, were developed somewhere else. So that Chips and Science Act really called for more funding support to develop this chips technology in the United States. So that's manufacturing, that's talent, that's Intel, that's the fabs to develop this technology. So this HBCU Chips Network, we actually hosted the HBCU Chips National Network Conference at Howard University last week, Thursday and Friday, where we brought different researchers and students from a variety of HBCUs that are in the network. And the way that people benefit, they benefit because they're able to come together with leading companies like Micron and others as well, to really get that cutting edge intel on where to go, how to do, what to do with respect to research, and then also education and creating pathways. We have calls every Thursday. We have one this morning, and where we give also each other high fives. They just gave a high five to an institution who just got a grant as part of the network. So they really take pride in acknowledging who's doing what. And then also here, okay, shameless plug, the Center for Applied Data Science and Analytics here at Howard, that I'm the executive director of, we're going to have a symposium on Easter Monday. So if you're in DC, come on through. As they say, I put a link to our LinkedIn page. We'll be posting more updated information. What we're going to do is we're going to show how we're doing data, AI, all that good fun stuff. And really, a lot of this stuff is done through collaboration, and it's across the disciplines. So that's it, and really, it's the collective strength that really is the superpower in being able to really bring to life. There's a phrase that iron sharpens iron, and so we grow when we're challenged, and not competitive in a bad sense, but competitive in a good sense, where we raise each other up and we help each other build and grow.
Thank you both for that insight and those important resources and information, because I certainly took away those key words in terms of not competition, but really working collectively. Dr. Jones with, the work within the Atlanta, area, and then the work here as well as in DC, how to reach out to the HBCUs. But let's get to also what can be challenging. What are the barriers that exist in forming cross-institutional research initiatives, and how can they be overcome?
Wow. I think 6 things come to mind, but I'll say 3. But I think the most obvious thing is funding, right? Resources. I just recently left. There was a conference here in Atlanta. It's called AFI, the Association of Black Foundation Executives. And so basically it's a collection of funders who are in the philanthropy world, Black funders. And so there are CEOs, program officers, and so on and so forth. So for 3 or 4 days, they held several, workshops around how philanthropy can actually help Black institutions. And there were at least 4 separate workshops on HBCUs. And so I went to all of them. And resources, of course, became the thing that everybody said consistently, because we know that, we look at it from peer-to-peer HBCUs to PWIs in regards to endowments, in regards to, big research grants, that we're not doing the same. But also as a part of that conversation, which goes to my next part, and particularly around faculty, and that is time. Right? I mean, having a course release, because research takes a lot to actually do really, really systematic, meticulous, research. And so that becomes also a barrier. And as a lot of faculty at HBCUs have very, very heavy teaching loads. And so, relieving faculty of teaching so that they can focus on on research, I think is also a barrier that has to be dealt with. And then finally, I'll just say I think the obvious thing that we're all seeing right now, that's happening in the news, and that is, and I'll just say it for what it is. It's the white racism that's kind of going on, the attack against DEI, because a lot of what we focus on at Black colleges is focusing on our people and doing research on our people. And so when you have a federal government who's saying that they're taking words like Black and African American and equity and all the things away, then of course that becomes a barrier for us to actually get the money to actually do research on our institutions. And so those things, I think, right now are like the biggest things that I think are the barriers that stop us from actually going out to build these collaboratives, to do these kind of research initiatives.
Yeah, totally agree. Got to have the resources to make it all work and grow in time, right? And then I'll just add on to it an interesting Howard Clark Atlanta interplay. So back in the day, Kelly Miller and W.B. Du Bois worked together. They were both sociologists, right? And Du Bois did a lot of data science. Well, he did a data science book that highlighted the story of Black Americans through portraits. Kelly Miller was a mathematician, and he was also the dean of the College of Arts and Sciences here at Howard. And so while they were both sociologists and they were about uplifting African Americans, their ideologies were definitely different. They didn't get along all the time. They had their own views and their own way of doing things. Dr. Jones could probably tell the story better than I can. But I always just like to give a shout out to Kelly Miller as mathematician. So and of course, one last random fact, Howard University is also named after a math professor, General Howard. He taught mathematics at West Point. But anyway, got to get it out. But back to Kelly Miller and W. Du Bois, while they were going for the same goal, they were doing it differently. And sometimes we can have entities or people who really are going after the same goal. They just need to do it differently, and that's okay. So we can't force, we'll say, a partner or partner institution to quote unquote get in line. We need to have some flexibility, that there may be more than one way to achieve a goal. There may be more than one way to get there. And to have some, I'll just say some grace, because as Dr. Jones have put it out, there's a lot of, we'll say, legislation or not that is happening. I did a Hill visit yesterday with the half of, I'm past president of the Association for Women in Mathematics, and I'm tired, but it was great. It was great. We were actually well received by all, both Republicans and Democrats. And we were definitely nervous going in, but there's a lot going on. So we also need to have grace with one another. And lastly, I'll say that when we have these collaborations, when we have these partnerships, we should not assume. So some people assume, oh, you should be okay with this, or oh, you should be okay with this role, or oh, you should be okay if it's done this way, but don't assume that. Just ask, what would you like in this collaboration? How do you see it happening? How do you see it's working? And let's have a conversation. There's a saying that I love. It's never be so sure of something you wouldn't take something better. And so if you throw an idea out there, be open and secure to let somebody else help tool it to something that is better than what, for example, I had originally thought of. And that takes an openness and a humbleness. And that's both at the institutional collaboration and then also it's people who are involved and facilitate those collaborations as well.
Again, those are excellent points, and the reality of the barriers, because we can't, we have to be able to address them, speak about them, figure out a plan to how to address all these barriers, especially around the funding. When there are pursuits and we're not receive the awards and the grants, how else can we still get the work done? Because the work still needs to get done. Right, working with faculty within your institution, as well as with other institutions, collaborating, is Dr. Washington said, understanding the differences and being okay and accepting of those, when you're working with, together, because again, it's not a competition, it's a collective, goal in mind. So with that being said, how can HBCUs establish research partnerships that drive policy and change?
Yeah, so before I answer that question, I want to also lift up someone else at Howard University that's celebrated, has its own institute. It's the Ron Walters Center. Ron Walters was a Black political scientist who he wrote a book that I think many of us as Black political scientists use as sort of like our North Star with our research. And it's a question. It says, what does this have to do with Black liberation? And so he left that question with us in regards to how we attempt and how we do our research, right? So, and it kind of goes back to even what Du Bois was asking us to do over about 100 years ago when he was focusing his studies around the Atlanta University Center and what we do with research, right? Do we have the luxury just to do research just for research's sake, or should our research actually impact and drive and change policy, right? So let me just tell you a couple of things that we're doing at the Du Bois Policy Center that is trying to get at that very thing. Right now, we're a part of a collective that is basically coming out of a philanthropic organization called WorkRise. And so it's a collaboration among about 5 HBCUs in the South, Clark Atlanta, Jackson State, Tougaloo College, Clinton College, and Johnson C. Smith as well. And so what we've been tasked to do in partnership with Cornell University is to study the working conditions of workers in the South. So each campus is tasked with actually doing survey research in partnership with a union organization or an organization that has access to worker data so that we can try to find and understand the working conditions of these individuals. So for us at Clark Atlanta University, we are surveying right now Waffle House workers and the conditions in which they are in as a way to try to collect data, to try to develop a portrait so that we can use those findings to be able to say that a Waffle House worker who only makes $3.25 an hour should at the very least get a minimum wage, right? And that means driving or creating legislation to be able to do that. That's one example I think that we do. The second thing that we've been in partnership with a nonprofit called the National Coalition of Black Civic Participation, and we just finished up a study that focused on that held focus groups around undercounting of Black men and families in the U.S. Census, right? Because one of the things we know is in 2020, in the last census, there were about almost close to 2 or 3 million Black folks that were undercounted. And so we sought to try to understand, like, why is that the case? And that is actually going out and researching. And so we collected our findings. And of course, it's not surprising. A lot of Black folks are just very, suspect with regards to giving away their information to the government. And more importantly, they fully do not understand how the census actually helps to improve the quality of life in their neighborhoods, right? And so it was a really, really compelling study. But of course, with that data, we want to push it to lawmakers to be able to make certain that as the 2030 census comes around, that the messaging and the targeting to Black communities would be different than it usually is, so that we can increase the participation of Black men in particular, but also of families. And so, and if you notice, both of those initiatives were in collaboration with private funders or private groups. And so it makes it a lot easier for us to kind of do those things, specifically in a very charged political environment right now, where just saying the word Black might get you, reprimanded. But as we think about this and kind of going back to Ron Walters, what is our responsibility as institutions, as researchers, with regards to how we can shape and change policy? I think that we have to be intentional about the things that we research and how we research so that we can change the quality of life of our communities.
And I'm thinking, and so you ask about, I'll say impacting or influencing policy and change in these interesting times. I'll say that, as as the immediate past president of the Association for Women in Mathematics, which is a professional society that advocates for women and girls in mathematics, we did a Hill visit all day yesterday, where we had about 35 people that we were put into different groups, and we just went and said, who we were, and please support women and girls in mathematics. And, math is needed for workforce development. AI is built on mathematics, right? It's just a probabilistic model. That's biased. And so making the case, and like I said, while oftentimes when you do Hill visits, you may talk to staffers. Staffers are the ones that are supposed to come up with the idea or the ideas for new legislation. And the staffers, I think one of them passive aggressively referred to me as their mom, but I was like, okay. I was like, I think somebody else who graduated from your school. I won't specify. She was like, oh yeah, they probably know my mom. I was like, okay, we'll just leave it alone. So the staffers are typically younger, but they're the ones who take down, they take down notes, and they're supposed to take that input from the public and then turn it into legislation. And then also being cognizant of what legislation is coming down the hill. I typically look at bills just because I'm in this whole AI space. I think the last time I looked at congress.gov and just looked for AI legislation, there were 467 pieces in the current year. And so I have to understand what's happening in policy realm, the legal realm, if I'm going to be of influence to it. A lot of the funding decisions that come down into the agencies are made in bills way ahead of time. And so it also behooves me to understand how, even though it's kind of dynamics at this time, it's like a soap opera, like every day is Friday sort of thing where everything's happening, if you remember soap operas. And so just keeping up with that and being able to sift through and understand how to leverage that. I will say that yesterday, and this is a biased sample set, the Democrats did seem a little tired. And so the Republicans seemed a little bit more refreshed, given about what's happening. And everybody was open to ideas, everybody. And so I am reassured. And, we will, AWM and along with other entities will be sure to continue to engage. Because if we don't engage with those who are actually writing down the bills, considering it, then what? Right? We can't be passive. I think in this time, I think we need to really think strategically in this time.
Yes, yeah, I completely agree. Because in order to combat the reversal of so many policies, we have to continue to, as you stated, to engage and to understand, what are the new policies that are being put in place to substitute. But speaking to what Dr. Jones stated earlier, in terms of the collaborations and the partnerships, what is it that can be done to help with the workload of faculty at HBCUs that also, due to funding, due to policies, there is a lack of funding for faculty to have a course release, or as well as have research assistants for, students to serve as research assistants. What can be done, and how can we, work together towards, addressing those things?
I like that. You go first.
Oh, okay. I figure she said it all, research, course release, making sure that like some faculty at some institutions, plural, get a course release, but then it's not honored and respected when the grant is awarded. So being, we'll say institutionally responsible for the grants that go out the door and supporting faculty to do that. And also ensuring that our systems support faculty. What do I mean by that? Providing opportunities for faculty development. Because by golly, when I learned some when I learned the tricks of the trade of project management, my life got so much easier. I understood, timeline, Gantt charts, stakeholder engagement plans, communication. I understood a lot more. I could do my job more efficiently. I could also manage my home life more efficiently too. So that was great. And so things got easier. And I think there's that saying that knowledge is power. So yes, course release, yes, students and researchers and support, yes, access to technology, and then also access to ongoing professional development. And many of our institutions, plural, we do a great job when people come in the door, but then after people are in the door, what are we doing to providing them ongoing training? So, for example, I'm tiptoeing into it, trying to until I get staff, so I understand. And so like at the last minute, last week on Wednesday, I told Microsoft, I said, fine, we'll do this AI upskilling in using Copilot. I said, we've got to do it virtually because I don't have like staff support, that sort of thing. And so Thursday morning, the email went out. Monday evening, like from Thursday to Monday evening, 7 p.m., we had over 200 people logged on. And it was a great time. And people were like, we need more of this. Most of the attendees were faculty and staff, and some were students, about 75% from Howard, and the rest were from HBCUs. And people are like, we need to do this again. When are you going to do this again? Because there's not many opportunities for folks just to kind of engage and do stuff together and just upskill. What are some tools just to make your everyday life better? Is it project management? Is it Gen AI in a nice, we'll say, responsible way? That sort of thing. Is it something else, right? So we're with CATSA, with our center, thinking about ways in which we can build programming and build opportunities for faculty, staff, students to just upskill to make their everyday workflow better and smoother, whatever that is for them.
So I'll zoom out a little bit and basically make a charge to, have a conversation with board members and presidents and leaders of colleges, universities about, the importance of faculty research. Because, somehow, in HBCU land, we talk a lot about graduation rates and retention rates and, student success. Like these are all buzzwords that are always kind of thrown around, which all of them are important. But, if we get back to the one of the very functions of a university or a college, it is to create knowledge, right? It is to add to what we know. And so I think, having that conversation, as a part of all these very more important conversation needs to happen more often. Because sometimes we as faculty kind of get left on the back burner, and it's almost as if, our job is just to teach. And it's an important function, teaching. But as we've been intimating today, research, particularly in these times, particularly, looking at the needs of Black communities and others, is that there's something that we can bring to the table. There's a perspective. There's knowledge that we can add that I think that can help us fully understand, to really wrestle with and grapple with these very complex challenges of this time, right? I mean, Dr. Washington just intimated about AI. I think that we offer a very unique perspective around how AI is used, what's feeding it, what's not feeding these machines and this machine learning and what have you. And so, but it takes a lot of time for us to sit down with very complicated problems. And so in order to make certain that the research argument has some validity and have some potency to it, you got to have that conversation around knowledge creation and the purpose of universities and college. Like that has to be a part of every president's speech, every provost's opening, speeches at the universities. And I see that not actually happening. And what most often happens is that faculty are told, okay, we need you to teach the students to do students research. And it's like, well, what about my research? How can we do both? And how do we value that? And so I think that there has to be a very high level conversation around the role and the function of of Black colleges in this moment and what we can bring to the table. And then, of course, the resources have to follow. But I think that conversation has to happen first. And I don't see a lot of that happening.
Thank you for that. I certainly agree that, the key to that is the conversation, at all levels, with the students, with the administration, among faculty in terms of what the needs are, with Howard earning the recognition and status of a Research One institution, being able to bring others to the table as well, and bringing them along so that they could also, so we're not the only HBCU, but we're one of many, that have been able to earn that status as Research One, and also to be able to maintain it and to continue to thrive in it. And I love the point of when to do this again, because that even speaks to the great work that the HBCU Center at Howard University under the leadership of Dr. Melanie Carter and Dr. Wade are doing by bringing, this, research network, collaboration and conversations these 2 days. So with that being said, I see that there's a couple of questions in from the viewers, attendees that would like to pose to the panelists. So any other attendees, if you would like to please pose some additional questions, feel free to. Okay. One of the questions is, how do you believe resources should be allocated to promote a healthy environment for meaningful research?
Which resources?
So
Okay.
I think I understand the spirit of the question. I'll just speak out of my own experience, right? And something I thought was a really, really good idea. When I first got my PhD, my first teaching appointment was at Johnson C. Smith University. And one of the things that I fully appreciated at the time, I'm not certain it's still true today, but the provost there and the president was clear on this question around helping faculty, do research, go to conferences or whatever. And so they had an idea that was novel at the time where they said, okay, every faculty member, we're giving you $1,000 for the whole entire academic year. If you want to use that to go to conferences, you want to use that to do research, if you want to use that to, buy books or whatever, then, I mean, it's up to you. You make the justification, but it's your $1,000. And I thought that was a very, a really good way of making certain that that everybody has an opportunity to step up and be a part of research, And then I've gone to other institutions where it's like the Hunger Games, where you have to compete and fight for that $1,000 or that $500. And as much as we would like to think that all things are being fair, I mean, sometimes, there are people who have friends and other people don't get resources. So it creates this very funky type of environment where, faculty are salty because they don't feel like they're being supported. So all I'm saying is that when HBCUs or when Black colleges are actually thinking about this, they have to think about it in terms of equity, in terms of fairness, in terms of making certain that everybody has an opportunity for those who do want to do research, because there's some faculty who are just happy with just teaching, right? And we need to have that conversation as well. But that is what I would say, is that it has to be equitable. And I think I think that's the spirit of the question that's being asked. I don't know, Dr. Washington, you want to take a shot?
I know, I'll just say I sit down and ask faculty, what do they want? Right. And I don't know if you remember, since I'm in DC right now, the TV show Scandal with Olivia Pope, which is like, what do you want? Sometimes we'll be like, oh, I don't like. What do you want? What makes an ideal situation? What needs to be done? What needs to happen? Right. So I'm the what do you want person. and how can we make this happen? So I guess my day-to-day job is thinking about data and AI across Howard University in the education, research, and operations. And so I'll ask, I was on a call yesterday when I asked, you could have anything. What do you want? And sometimes we can get so locked into, oh, things are bad, things are bad. Well, what would it look like if things were not bad? What does that picture look like? What support do you need? What resources do you need? What would be helpful? And so part of my role is essentially pulling that out, because I could guess, with an administrator hat on, I could guess what the healthy environment is for faculty. And I'd probably guess wrong if I'm not using the faculty perspective. Each institution's different, each school college is different, each department is different. A couple weeks ago, I had the privilege of flying all the way out to Montana, even though there was snow on the ground. That was a little weird for me because it was just a couple weeks ago and that didn't seem normal, but minus the snow on the ground in Montana, it was a symposium with historians. So there were historians talking about how they're using AI, historians talking about digitizations, historians talking about how to create digital archives, that sort of thing. And so as a mathematician, I'm an applied mathematician, so I usually go in and out of different disciplines. History as a research discipline is not one that I've had the pleasure of really coming into. And so that was the first time I came in. I mean, I sat in the front row, took it all in. And so for me, it opened up my eyes that this is a different sort of scholarship production. This is a different sort of research production. There are different needs, there are different resources, there are different strategies, different ideas about what makes good research and what doesn't. And so it was, I think having us go in and out of these different disciplines to understand how research and scholarship is defined differently can help us be a little bit more flexible and agile when we do create these environments for everyone to flourish in their research, in their way, for their discipline, for the greater good, right? Of just knowledge generation, and not assume that it has to be like this and everybody's going to go down that path. So I'm thankful to be, I guess, in the snow with the historians for a couple of days, because it was a great reminder and a great eye opener to not assume what really would create a good, healthy environment for researchers, but to really dig in and understand what is important, what is scholarship, what is research, and have a real understanding for what it takes to do that work.
Thank you for that. And to the point of Dr. Washington, in psychology, there is a solution-focused, therapy theory. And one of the questions or interventions is to come up with that miracle question. If everything was ideal, if everything was perfect, what would that look like? And it looks different for different people. And also depending on your discipline, you can have similar goals, but different ways to approach it based on your discipline. So I think that's very important. So another question that was posed is there a place or space to partner with Hispanic serving institutions?
So I put in the chat. So there's the HACU. That's the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities. So it is that, right? Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities, a paid membership where you can be an institutional member. They have conferences in the springtime. They'll be here in DC where they meet for a day and then they go to the Hill and remind folks about how great their institutions are and continue supporting. And then they also have research conferences as well, but it's a really great network of HSIs and just a really fun place to be. Really love engaging with HACU. And then also SACNA, so I'm a life member. SACNA stands for Society of Advancement of Native Americans and Society for the Advancement of Chicanos and Native Americans in STEM. I'm speaking too fast with this beautiful coffee here. And so SACNAS is an annual conference where people can share their research, people can form collaborations. It's huge, it's fun. So in that it's where culture meets STEM and you can just be who you are where you are. I also participate in SACNAS, their leadership institutes. They have leadership institutes. They actually did it out here at HHMI when I participated, and I had a ball. One of my former gigs, I was at the U.S. National Science Foundation, and I was the co-lead that launched their first Hispanic Serving Institutions program. And so that was 2017. 2018 was when we launched our first solicitation. So I had to really think deeply about what do HSIs need, different institution types from R1s to masters to undergraduate only to community colleges, and how do you create a funding opportunity that really does improve undergraduate education in a meaningful way. So I would check those out, and maybe I'll see you at one of the Haku meetings.
Yeah. And to elaborate a little bit on that question, as a Latina faculty member here at Howard, what is it that the Latino faculty from HBCUs do to also help and collaborate with faculty at Hispanic serving institutions?
Well, it can start with conversations. So, for example, a couple weeks ago, so California state system, right? So in California, you have the UCs, University of California system, which are traditionally the research ones. The California state universities, 23 of them, many of them, most are HSIs, are traditionally, I'll say, R2s. And then you also have the community colleges. So I reached out to the CSUs, the Cal States, at the system level, because they have this amazing AI initiative that they launched. And so we had just I just reached out cold and was like, hey, we'd like to meet with my people, want to meet with your people, and let's get together and just do a knowledge share around AI. And we had an amazing conversation, but that's where it starts. And so I'll follow up and just kind of leverage that. And, but it starts with really just reaching out and say, I really like this. Can I learn more? And then this is what we're doing. And maybe there's something we can do together. And what does that look like? So it just really just starts by reaching out.
Yeah, I certainly agree. I think sometimes even within the university, we all work in, again, certain different departments, different colleges within the university. Everyone works in their own silo. So you don't know, about the work and the research that others are doing. So having those conversations is really important. So another question that was posed, and thank you, Dr. Washington, for providing a link for a resource, but perhaps, Dr. Jones, if you would like to also provide some insight into this question, any insights on ways to establish sustainable relationships between HBCUs and Africa-based universities beyond study abroad programs?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. At Clark Atlanta, I think we're almost close to answering that question. We are developing strategic relationships in universities in Ghana, where we are poised to not only just have study abroad opportunities for faculty and students, but also recruiting students from Ghana to come to Clark Atlanta University and sending our students over there. If I had it my way, one of the things I would love to do, and in the spirit of what Dr. Washington was talking about, bringing people together, I would love to see, faculty swaps, administrator swaps, where administrator can go there for a semester and learn, and vice versa. Because one thing is very clear, at least in my mind, by the mid-century, is that Africa is probably going to be, if not the most important continent, in the world, with probably the most people in the world and the most young people in the world. And so it makes sense for us right now to establish those relationships, to be able to build and to be able to knowledge share and to build relationships and partnerships, so that we can assist and they can help us as well in building out I guess you could say, an African diaspora community, which is something I think, kind of going back to Du Bois, his vision around the Pan-African conferences. It's always having these conversations. And so that intentionality, I think, is more important. So not just going there for 2 or 3 weeks and staying and, visiting, and no, a long-term established relationship, which means we got to talk more, which means it's not a one-way streak. It's both ways. And so that's what I think that needs to happen. And of course, these things need to be formalized, right? They need to be formalized in whether MOUs or and contracts, to make certain that if leadership does turn over, as it often does at our institutions, that it'll be sustained so that it would outlast the leadership tenure of anyone at either one of the universities. And so that is how I think we can develop something that's longstanding, but it starts now, because I think everybody is clear by 2050, like, Africa is going to be on fire. And so we need to start this right now.
Yeah. And I'll just add on to that. My colleague here at Howard, Dr. Latanya Brown Robinson, who's amazing. She has an NSF grant that supports research collaborations between Howard and universities in Ghana. And so I put a link in the Q&A, so hopefully you can access that. But the students go there along with faculty, and they do research projects together around data science and analytics. So it's not a study abroad program in the traditional sense. I'm a product of study abroad, both in Costa Rica High School, Mexico College. It was amazing. And so, but with this program, it really is a deep dive research, doing data science, AI, visualization, machine learning, to do research projects together. Their faculty, our faculty, their students, our students. And so really mixed in to find these solutions. Before January, we were working with USAID and to develop a partnership with Nairobi, right? Nairobi, Kenya, which is the Silicon Savannah. Everybody has a cell phone, meant to pay, and all the rest of that. So working passion project to grab the folks who were there and say, let's just go submit for funding so we can have a collaborative research between the two, because we now know each other. We went to Nairobi for a week in December to really think about how can we develop a meaningful project. And initially, it really was us getting to know each other, us understanding their system, their educational system, expectations around teaching, around research, all the rest of that, and vice versa. And so we have, I think, a wonderful understanding of all the different entities. And so I just gotta, once the dust settles, I gotta pull everybody together and see if we can just launch a program. And I'm anticipating it would be for next year, because I'm ready to go back to Nairobi. It was beautiful.
Thank you. I know that also here at Howard University, Dr. Navis does some excellent work through the Bunch International Center. And again, it's not, of course, the Bunch Center does oversee the study abroad opportunities for students, but there's also a lot of engagement within faculties and different programs, with the different countries within Africa, as well as in the Caribbean, and, just internationally, as well in terms of even Spanish-speaking countries as well. So I think that is, as you said, to have those more than just study abroad, but also formalized meetings, have MOUs, agreements that go beyond just who's in leadership, because that's going to possibly shift, and wanting to maintain that for the generations to come. So we only have a few minutes left, and I certainly would love for Dr. Jones and Dr. Washington to provide any final thoughts, comments, recommendations for those attending the session.
Well, so first of all, I just want to say I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you. Thank you for the HBCU Center, Dr. Carter, Dr. Washington, Dr. Eubanks. Thank you for this conversation. This is very, very intriguing. I guess the only thing that I would say, and if there's a point of emphasis I wanna raise, is that you know, we are in a very interesting and trying times that we are. And I can just speak for myself at the Boys Policy Center. You know, we have got to figure out a way to fill the gap of this erasure that is going on, not only just with our history, even with the research and the data. And I think that HBCUs have to intentionally, over these next few years, focus on trying to figure out a way to combat what is clear in my mind is an assault on Black folks and Black institutions and Black life and Black history. And so for as much as we can, we must stand in that gap in our own spaces through our research, through our speaking, through, you know, with our students and administration, because historically we have done that. And so that's the emphasis that I want to leave. And my recommendation or my charge to the audience and whomever else is listening to this is that we have got to stand in the gap, and we have got to hold the line until we weather this political storm.
So I'll just say, first of all, thank you for a great discussion. Always great to see Dr. Jones. You know, before my current gig, I was at the illustrious Clark Atlanta University. So, you know, always colleagues. And so, you know, I just want to also say a special thank you to the Center for HBCU Research, Leadership, and Policy. We really need centers such as this one. It's very important to really amplify that collective voice and to share resources, share ideas, share ways in which we can do this thing of collaboration so we can reach newer heights. And to be frank, it's kind of fun, right? It's kind of fun to grow, develop, and better to do it together, right? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go as a team. And so that also applies to institutional collaborations as well. So really thank you for this interesting and rich discussion today. And I would say just keep on doing and keep on pushing forward and stay positive, diligent, and be curious. And as these things progress, because things will be okay. But we need to be a part of the solution. As they say, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So let's go ahead and sit at that table, lean in, and make the world a better place for everyone.
Thank you both. This has certainly been a very educational hour. The resources, the information, the knowledge that has been just gained within this, you know, limited time. If we again continue these conversations beyond, you know, this room, virtual, but having the face-to-face continues to, you know, grow this, because we have to again learn from what has been done in the past to continue to work towards the future, because the future we have to continue to believe and strive for the best for those, you know, coming after us. So thank you, Dr. Jones, and thank you, Dr. Washington.